So Sam, tell us about your journey as an entrepreneur, because pretty young, you've achieved a lot in a very short space of time. So where did it all begin?
Well, I guess it began when I was about 20 years old, which was about 4 years ago now. And I was doing a BCom at Auckland University, finishing it up and working at Vodafone. And, I'd worked hard through school, through uni, and now this was kind of like what I'd been working towards. And it was just pretty boring, to be honest. Like, it wasn't that amazing. I couldn't imagine the next, 30 or more years of my life doing that. And then one weekend I went away to a friend of a friend's place who owned a private island. And I remember just sitting on the island, and I was looking around at everything on it, and I was like, there is just absolutely no way that I could ever buy this or live like this, doing what I'm currently doing. And this guy has so much more time than me, free time than me, and has all of this stuff and seems to be having way more fun than everyone else. And I was like, I want this. And I asked, what does this guy do? And everyone was like, he's an entrepreneur. And I didn't even know what that meant. So I remember getting back, because there was no internet access on the island. So I remember getting back to Auckland and Googling, like, what is an entrepreneur? And I guess that's where it all started about 4 years ago. And I just knew that I wasn't really happy doing what I was doing, and I wanted that. And that's where it all began.
So it was a real sense of almost predestiny. You thought, this is actually really what I want to do, and the commerce, doing the commerce degree was really just going to take you down a career path that didn't really engage you.
Yeah, well, I had throughout school, everyone said, you get a job in an office, that's success. You wear a suit, you get a salary, you work in an office, like, that's success. And I was like, okay. Because I came from a family where, like, my dad was a builder, and he had always said that's success, because he pictured that as the next step up from what he was doing. And that's what the teachers told me. And then you get to university and everyone's making it sound like it's hard to get a job and that you're lucky if you get a job. And I thought, like, oh, I'm so lucky to get this job and I'm at the top of the world. And then I got in there and I was like, this is so dull. And I was still living with it. It was all right. But then going to that island and seeing, for one, doing work that's way more exciting, way more rewarding, two, having way more spare time, and three, being able to enjoy, all of the toys and things like that. And I was like, I want to do this.
How did you decide then to take that next step? Because it's one thing to think about where you want to go, but obviously you've got to then work on the idea. How did you go about that part of the next stage of the process?
Sure. So, that's that instantly, I might have spent a month thinking, what is an entrepreneur, reading all sorts of stuff on it. Then I figured I need an idea, which I think is what everyone first thinks about. And then I was just thinking, and I just thought, oh, well, I'll start like a job board website, because, I'd previously, hunted for jobs and figured, it could be done better than Seek and stuff like that, and just had an idea to do it, and then decided to do it. Sold my car, spent all of my money building it, and a whole year working on it, and the whole thing failed. I lost all my money, but I was still sort of fence sitting, so I was still working at Vodafone, still doing the last pieces of my degree, and doing this. So I was always kind of hedging.
Kind of bootstrapping.
Yeah, and hedging my bets, like, because I was so unsure. And so it was okay if it failed. I still had income coming in, and I was still doing my degree, and I could still hold on to that other world. And it wasn't until I, burned my bridges and cut that off that I really started to make good progress as an entrepreneur. So I dropped out of university without getting my degree, quit my job, and just decided to go, I'm going to do this full time.
Was that a scary moment for you? Did you think about? Because obviously you've got all of those risk elements with doing something like that. How did you mentally deal with that, throwing it all away and literally chasing your dream?
Well, I was flatting, so I moved back home. So I sort of gave that up. I moved back home, and I just remember slashing every expense I had. My gym membership, which was only like, $60 a month, just cut like everything. Even my phone bill, I went back to prepay. I seriously would even double think about going to get a coffee. Like, I just tightened right up. And I just worked so hard. Like, I'd get up at 5 and work through till like, 8 or 9, just because I knew that, I'd burn my bridges. I had to make this work. And it was worrying. And, everyone thought, even my parents, my girlfriend at the time, my friends, they think you're doing the wrong thing, because you did have what, society calls success. Could wear a suit, sit in an aircon building, get a salary package, and have a degree. But, that was never enough.
That wasn't for you?
No.
And then you decided to come up with this idea about focusing on the property sector. How did that come about?
So I learned, because I had 2 failed businesses before I started the current one that I have, called SnapInspect, which is my main focus right now. And both of those businesses failed basically because I just created something out of just nothing. I came up with an idea and thought it would be cool, so I did it. And I think that's honestly why so many businesses fail. And I had this massive realization that you need to solve a problem. You need to find a painful problem that exists, within a specific market, and then create a solution to it. And that you cannot create desire in a market. It's impossible to create desire. You can only harness desire that already exists in a market. So I picked property management companies, and I started phone calling them and just saying, hey, look, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to learn on a day-to-day basis, what is the most painful part of being a property manager.
Just before we get into that, what did you discover from the failure points that you were trying to take into the new business that you thought were the key learnings that you had to address third time round?
Number 1 was solve a problem. Number 2 was go after a specific market. Don't create something for everybody. Pick a niche. I'd create something and people would ask me, who is it for? And I'd say, just everyone. Everyone can use it. And that's a big problem, because when you come to market it and sell it, you don't even know who you're supposed to be talking to. You could just be walking down the road, stopping people and saying, hey, look, but you want to have a small group. And that was lesson 2. And lesson 3 was that making money is extremely important. If you have a business and someone asks you, how is it going to make money? And you say, I don't know, I'll worry about that one later. That's extremely dangerous, because you burn money fast and you need money to survive. And without it, the whole thing will collapse. And it's extremely important for it to make money from day one. And when you're testing the idea, so this is probably the biggest one actually, is to thoroughly test things before you put the commitment into building them. So, and not just by, asking people. So first of all, you have to work out, is this a problem? And does everyone in this specific group believe that this is a problem? That's step 1. The next thing is, do they see value in having this problem solved? So if you said to them, if I could solve this problem for you, is that something that you want? Yes, so they want it. But that's only 2 layers. That's still 2 layers more than what most New Zealand entrepreneurs I see do when they validate an idea. But the third layer or the third level of validation is, would they be willing to pay for it? And that's, okay, so this is a problem, you see value in the solution. Would you be willing to pay for it? If that's a yes, you're 3, but you really ultimately want to be 1 level further, which is 4 layers deep, 4 levels of market validation, and that's actually getting people to pay for it.
Which is getting them to sign up in advance.
Yeah, pay money. So Like, I'm sure most people have played poker with their friends with no money, and everyone's just, all in, just completely irrational. Same thing in business. Even if you ask someone, would you buy this, and they say yes, that doesn't mean that they're going to buy it. And they actually have more chance of not buying it than actually buying it, because there's no actual risk in it. So just like in poker, put $5 in, everyone's all of a sudden serious. And just like in business, you say, okay, well, this is how much it costs, let's get you signed up. And as soon as they actually have to, pass money, the real side comes out. And you want to have all 4 layers of validation before you start any new business.
So this was the approach you took with the property sector. So you start phoning people around and you start getting to know some information about the sector. What are you discovering during that process?
Okay, so first of all, I picked a market, which was one of the lessons, which is property management. Then I found a problem, and it's amazing, people like to talk about themselves, especially when you have no hidden agenda. When you're not trying to sell them anything, you just want to learn about them. They feel like, celebrities that people love to talk about themselves. So you'll be shocked. You'll think, oh, a stranger won't want to talk to me, but I had hour-long conversations with strangers.
People you'd virtually never met.
Over the phone, met up for coffee with people who I'd never met. And they would just tell me about their problems as a property manager. And I'd just listen. And after I spoke with about 20 of them, which was over the course of only 4 weeks, I was like, oh my God, everybody has this problem. And that problem was doing property inspections. And the way they were doing them was with a digital camera, a clipboard, and a pen. And they'd do them manually. Then they'd go back to the office, type it all up in Word, create a report, and then email it manually. And it took so much time. They all hated it. It was never going away. It was a real problem. Everyone in the market had the problem. Everyone saw value in it being solved, and everyone agreed to pay money for it. And then I took it to that 4th layer by coming up with the pricing for it and getting people to pay for the product before it even existed. So I didn't have the product built. All I had was a concept on paper, and I still got people to pay for it, even though it didn't exist. And that for me was validation. People are willing to pay for this. It's a specific market, solves a problem. I've collected the money. This is a solid idea. And then I decided to build the product.
How long did that whole process take, and the challenges that you faced in actually turning that idea into a product?
Okay, so it honestly only took 4 to 6 weeks to pick the market and to find the problem and to get people to pay for the solution, because there was no development of any product in there, and it cost me nothing. So I spent no money, took no risk, wasted no time, and essentially had in my hands a really valuable, validated business idea. So there's the lesson for most entrepreneurs. You don't need to take massive risk. You don't need to waste lots of time or be insanely smart or come up with an idea, like a miraculous idea. I didn't do any of those things.
Or write extensive business plans.
Yeah, I've never written a business plan in my entire life, and I don't intend to either. Nor do I ever intend to just have an idea. The market gives me the ideas.
How much did you try and piece some stuff together on paper though? Did you do any of that, or did you just have it all in your head?
So I had drawn concept of how the product would work, and I had on paper how much it would cost, and in Excel I modeled how much I could probably make with this thing. But I was never trying to get investment from outsiders or anything like that. So really I'd be doing a business plan for myself, and does anyone need one themselves? I just knew what was important. I knew what was important was money, because of my other businesses. Yeah. So all that was important to me was customers. If I had 10 customers that had paid for a product and wanted it, that's all I needed. That's better than any business plan.
Were you, I mean, at this stage you presumably had some debt accumulated as well from the failed businesses and so forth. You had some credit cards fairly extended. Was that concerning you at that stage?
Yeah, but it was small. Like, I was in debt, maybe like I had 15 grand on credit cards, different ones, which is quite a lot of debt for, I think back then I was 22 years old. It's quite a lot of debt, but it didn't really concern me because it's not that much money,
No much more than a student loan.
Yeah, and even if you had to get a job at McDonald's, you can pay that back. Like, I wasn't, risking my family's home or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And therefore, the next stage was obviously the construction of the app. So how did you go about that process?
Sure. So another thing for entrepreneurs is, you don't need to know how to build whatever it is that you want to sell. So I knew the problem, I knew what the solution was. The solution was an app, a piece of software. And I don't know how to code. I don't even know how to build a website that would say hi on it. I don't know anything about it. But that didn't bother me. I figured, well, I'll get someone else to do it. And so, not having much money, I went on the internet and found companies in India. And found a company in India that looked at my plans, said they could build it. They said it would take about 2 or 3 months and cost around 10,000 New Zealand dollars, and which was around $6,000 US at the time. And they had milestone payments. So, payment 1 was only like 2,500. Payment 2 was at a certain stage of development when that was more. And I only just had enough from pre-selling all of those other companies to pay milestone 1. I didn't even know how I was going to pay the rest of them, but I just said, all right, let's do it. And so we did it, and then I figured out ways to make those other milestone payments. And that's how we got version 1 of the product built. And it's difficult working with, people on the other side of the world on another time zone with communication barriers. It was not easy. They said 2 to 3 months. It ended up taking about 5, and ended up going $2,000 over budget. But that's just what you'd expect. And lots of hiccups along the way. But we got the product ready. We once it was built, we gave it to all the customers that had paid for it in advance. We made sure first that they were all happy with it. Once they were happy with it, we started to sell it to more and more companies slowly. And over time, we were able to sell it, slowly. We were adding maybe 2-3 customers a month. And then, as we learned how to sell it and who to sell it to, we got better at it and, started scaling it up quite rapidly.
Because one of the interesting experiences you discovered was that initially you were selling to smaller clients and they kind of give you the runaround, and then you discovered that, hang on, there's actually some very large clients out there who don't really have a lot of demands placed on you once you've made the sale. How did you sort of work through that sales process from there?
Yeah, well, one of the major things, again, for entrepreneurs is their confidence and their mindset. So what they believe. And, as a young guy, you think, well, I can only sell into New Zealand, because that's what most New Zealanders think. Like, my market is New Zealand. So that's one thing I thought. The other thing is the big guys will look at me and they won't listen to me. So I was focusing on the smallest companies in the smallest country in the world. So like the lowest of the low of the market. And they were worth not much money. They didn't have much money to spend, and they were difficult to sell. And I learned that, and so I started targeting, the medium-sized ones and then eventually the big ones. And I realized that it's easier to sell a bigger company than it is to sell a smaller one. And I also realized that my product, could be sold in other countries. So, I took those lessons and then focused on, the upper end of the market in the best countries in the world. So, the upper end of real estate market in the United States and in Australia, the United Kingdom, basically took that away because, for example, I was selling my product to companies in New Zealand that would pay me $49 per month, and they were hard to sell. And then I sold a company in the United States that was $10,000 per month, which was so much more than $49 a month that it's ridiculous. And just to sell one of those companies is already a six-figure salary, and it was surprisingly easy.
Did you surprise yourself then
Yes.
as to how quickly things were starting to grow for you?
Yeah, well, I couldn't believe almost that you could sell a piece of software that originally cost me 10 grand to build, just give access to it to someone for $10,000 a month.
So you recovered all your costs in 1 month.
Yeah, well, at this point, it's fair to say like the product had advanced from its original version. But yeah, like another thing I've seen New Zealand entrepreneurs do is they charge too little. So, charge high, don't be afraid. Like companies, there's so much money out there. Like you can charge ridiculous prices for things. The other thing is target the best companies with the most money to spend. And the other one is you can sell anywhere in the world. It's not just New Zealand.
Particularly with apps, isn't it? I mean, it's a global business.
But even with, everything, I'd say, because I've got a few companies now, and I'd say that 99.5% of all the money I've ever made has come from America. Yeah. And that's where most of my money has come from. There's just more out there than there is here.
With the app, were the competitors in the market at the time you developed the app?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first entered the market, there was one in San Francisco that was funded. So they had investment, and they were in Silicon Valley, so pretty intimidating. There was another one in Australia that, the people behind that looked like they had a bit of money, and, both of them were already established, so it was kind of intimidating. But I still decided to enter the market.
And was your belief at that point that you could do something better?
No, all I based it on was that when I talked to the market, this was still a problem. And I figured these companies had very little penetration into the market because everyone I talked to still had no solution in place.
Which is a good point, because simply because something exists doesn't mean to say somebody's going to be using it.
Precisely. And the way you think about it is, think about when cell phones came out, right? When cell phones first came out, only a very small percentage of the world had them. Now, because that was when they first came out and the market was very unsophisticated. Now there are 1.5 cell phones per person. So it's more than 100% penetrated, it's 150%. That's because the market's become so sophisticated and developed. And now we have crazy products like iPhones and all sorts. But when it started, they were so basic and small market share. And that's what happens with all markets. And when I entered this market, which is the property inspection app market, because of lots of market influences like mobile data didn't exist. Then it was too slow. Then it was too expensive. So mobile data was right. Phone cameras were right. Apps, people were used to apps, and people had smartphones. All of those things around the time when I entered this market made it the right time for this market to develop. But I got into it early where it was maybe 2% penetrated. And over time, and over the next few years, every single property management company will have an app, just like now everyone has a cell phone. And so that's how all markets work, and that's how I saw the market when I entered. And that's a really important lesson to understand market sophistication, because if you go into it, like let's say I chose, I'm going to enter the cell phone market now. Well, I'm up for some serious competition. Yeah.
So, Sam, what does success look like for you now, and what spaces are you pushing into? I mean, you're only 24, so you've got a lot of time to go and do lots of other things. So, how are you focusing the business, and how has your life changed? I presume the $15,000 debts are well paid off by now.
Yeah. So business is pretty good. We've grown SnapInspect from, a one-man business in a garage to, an international business now with an office overseas and 1,600 customers. And that's, 3 times the size of the New Zealand property management market. There's only 500 property management companies in New Zealand. We have 1,600. So that's another lesson for going global. So SnapInspect's going good. My main focus is growing that. There's still plenty of market share out there. And, we're trying to get more of it. And that company's doing really well. And other things, I don't know. I'm sort of starting to think of, what happens after SnapInspect. And I'm honestly not too sure yet. Like, I've thought about, getting into investing in earlier stage companies, and probably like more along the investment side of things, but I never really think further than 1 year, to be honest. I'm only ever really thinking 1 year ahead at a time. And right now that's just growing SnapInspect